was struck by the image in the gospel today, an image that had not really ever occurred to me before, but in this story, Jesus says, basically to his disciples, he says, "Come here, fellows, we're going to watch this. We're going to watch everybody put their money in the basket." I've never really thought of the idea that Jesus is intentionally calling them and saying, we're going to watch this and we're going to learn something here. And I think that by pulling out this image, there's a couple of fears that this might play on and cause people to be confused. The first is the fear that Jesus is always watching, like a boogeyman. I think a lot of people avoid Christianity or are a little bit put off by Jesus because they're afraid that he's like some PE teacher with a clipboard standing there watching all the time. And I think the other fear that this image might have for people is the idea that Christians are always talking about money. I think if we look at the first fear, that fear that Jesus is always watching and just standing there over you, waiting for you to mess up, I think we just have to get over that. We just have to get past that and realize that that's not really, he does see everything. And that's really important that we understand that Jesus does see everything, but it's not like the PE teacher type of seeing everything. But it's helpful for us to recognize that Jesus does see everything, not like a warden in a jail, not like somebody watching your every move on security cameras, but in the sense that I think if we recognize what's really happening there, we realize that everything matters. And that's a really healthy realization to have. There's nothing that's unimportant. Jesus is watching everything, not for the purpose, first and foremost, to just sit there and wait for you to mess up. Jesus is watching everything because everything matters. There is nothing that is unimportant. There is nothing that is without significance. A lot of times we think in our lives, if we look at this day to day, perhaps, if we look back on it, we can think, well, I had some downtime there, and whatever I did, didn't really matter. And that, this time it didn't really matter what I did with this or that, but, there were little moments there that did matter, but most of it didn't, or parts of the day didn't matter. And Jesus says, that's not right. That's not true. Every moment matters, and Jesus watches every moment and sees every moment because it's all important. He's not a warden in a jail. He's someone who recognizes the importance of every second of our lives. And it's for that reason that he's always watching. The second fear, by looking at this image of Jesus calling the apostles together and saying, fellows, we're going to watch what happens when they put money in the basket. That other fear that, it's all about money. I get that. And I watch a lot of stations and listen to other stations, and a lot of the stations on television that are Christian, I look for, there's some preachers that I like to watch and have good things to say. But I'll be honest, on those television stations, there's always a place where you can call. It's always coming back to money, money, money. Here's the number down here, call. I think we do a good job in our Catholic faith of not making it all about money. We don't talk very much about it. We don't focus on it. It's not a give and take type of thing. It's not if you give this amount, then I'll help you in this way. It's none of that. But to say that money has nothing to do with it, I think is also off the point, because Jesus says in today's gospel, now this isn't the whole gospel. That's important. And I think some of our brothers and sisters out there that are making it too much about money need to realize this is a small percentage of the gospel, today's story, but it's one of the stories. Jesus tells the apostles, let's get together and we're going to watch what everyone puts in because it matters. And so we do have to admit that money is involved. It is something that's a part of how I live out the gospel, how I live my life as a Christian. not the money amount. And that's the whole point of the gospel. It's not about the amount from one person to the next, that if you give $1 million, you're a great Christian, and if you give 2 pennies, you're a terrible Christian. Jesus does a great job of putting it all into perspective in this particular gospel passage. Again, in our Catholic faith, we don't talk about this all the time, and I think that's a good thing. We talk about it in proportion to its part in our larger life of faith. We have once a year, we have a thing where our archdiocese, we have a United Catholic Appeal and an opportunity to support not just our own parish, but the ministries that are going on throughout the archdiocese. And there are certain things that just can't be done at a parish level that need to be done by the archdiocese. At St. Paul's in Greencastle, my other parish, the diocese is funding completely the work of 5 people who are spending most of their life this year trying to reach out and save college students and bring them back and keep them connected to their Catholic faith. 75% of college students stop practicing their Catholic faith in college. 75%. And yet, St. Paul's in Greencastle could not afford to help fund 5 people to devote most of their life to helping these kids stay connected to their faith while they're at DePaul, or Indiana, or Purdue, or whatever it might be. That's just one example, the one that I'm most involved with and most aware of. The Catholic Charities work, the work of Catholic education throughout the Archdiocese, all of these ministries reaching out to those who are imprisoned and those who are out of prison. All of these things are ministries that are going on in our Archdiocese, and it's our opportunity this weekend to discern and pray about how might I be called to help out. There's this beautiful phrase in the gospel that she contributed all she had, her whole livelihood. Sometimes when I hear that, I beat myself up because I'm like, I'm not contributing my entire livelihood to the gospel. There are things that I am selfish about still. But I do think it's important for us to stop and say, as I was thinking about this, praying about this gospel this week, of saying, you know what, we do need to stand up for ourselves sometimes and say, and thank God. I think God's asking us to recognize, you know what, we are doing a pretty darn good job. We might be called to more. Christ is always saying, are you giving your whole livelihood? And most of us will probably say, not yet. But we do, I think, have to not just walk away with our heads down. We do have to stand up and look around and say, you know what? I am getting better at this. My temptation, I don't know about for you, but my temptation when I hear that's to beat myself up. But I have to say, you know, I'm not just living for myself. I am giving some of my livelihood. I can do more, but I'm getting there. And that's what I think this is an opportunity for us to step back and ask. Is there a way in which I can give more of myself to the spread of the gospel throughout the Archdiocese and throughout the parish and throughout our world? We have a lot of ways to contribute. I don't look and see, the Archbishop doesn't look and see, you know, who's doing this and how much is what. There's a lot of ways to contribute, a lot of opportunities and places, but I've decided more and more as I've grown older that I feel like my charity needs to flow through the parish and flow through the Archdiocese. As much as there are a lot of other great places, I feel a call to that, and I hope that maybe you consider that as well. In your bulletins this weekend, there's an envelope. Even if you plan or not able to, or you don't feel called this year to give anything to the Archdiocese and their charity and their missions throughout the Archdiocese, if you could send that in, and if you don't like something that's going on, write that on there. You know, I'd like to see more of this, or I'd like to see more of that, or whatever it might be. But if you can just send that in, that would make my life a lot easier. I appreciate that. But again, whatever it is, I hope that you take it home and you pray about it and think about it a little bit and ask that important question, am I giving my livelihood for the gospel? And if I'm not quite there yet, where I'm able to say, yes, I am giving my entire livelihood, like this poor widow, we pray for the strength to do that more fully tomorrow and to keep growing in that so that one day we can stand up and say, Lord, I love you, and I'm giving all of my livelihood and everything that I have for you and for the spread of your gospel.